Welcome, everyone. My name is Dan, and I'll be updating you on Tombolo and RealBI, two projects my team is developing for use with the HPCC Systems platform. After I show you a bit that's changed in these two projects over the past year, Yadhap will then show you a more complete demo of Tombolo and how it works. Both projects have been around for a while, and you may have heard of them. Tombolo was presented by Jerry Jacob at last year's summit. Both projects are freely available, released under the Apache open source license. I'll review RealBI first, and then Tombolo. RealBI has been around for a couple years. It's a visualization platform that's tightly integrated with HPCC systems. No third-party tools are required. It talks directly to the cluster and retrieves data from either flat files or indexes stored on the cluster or queries run by Roxy or HTHOR. The widgets that are produced can be linked together to produce drill down effects, as you've seen in some other visualization applications. In RealBI, we have made a few changes. One of them is an improved favorites tab. So in the left nav, you can more easily bookmark and recall the dashboards that you like using the new navigation menu that you see with the red hearts. Another improvement relates to locating files on the cluster when identifying a chart data source. The list of available files now appears in a hierarchical menu, which aids in navigation. You can still locate a file by typing the first few characters of its name. The code behind this feature has been improved to better handle a large number of files, and it's much more responsive. The code behind our chart widgets has also been updated and improved. The final display has been cleaned up and modernized, and there are more styles to choose from. The newer widgets also better handles large data sets. Now to Tombolo. Tombolo has also been available for a few years now. It's a secure framework for data curation and governance. It organizes documents and resources in your data lake. It also automates data production services and provides documentation for your data assets. We have a development roadmap, and we've been making changes based on customer feedback over the past year. One of the things we've added is a minor but important improvement for authentication. So we have a new authentication method based on Azure Active Directory. This is particularly useful if you've already used AAD for user authentication and authorization. We had email notifications in Tombolo before, but we've enhanced them. Now, for every job you run in a workflow, you can receive email notifications for not just on failures, but job success or, whenever. Rich text support has been added throughout as well. Basically, anywhere where there's a text box, you can use Markdown syntax to provide headings, bold, italic fonts, images, and more. Jobs within Tombolo refer to work units in an HPCC cluster. Those jobs contain ECL. Tombolo can extract that ECL and show it here. What we've done is updated the widget behind that display so that it provides an IDE-like view capability, such as syntax coding and a mini-map. This is still a read-only display, but making this change has greatly enhanced the readability of the code and aids in troubleshooting steps. One of the larger changes we've made is in compliance. Now, constraints within Tombolo can be thought of as restrictions on how data can be used. That could be PII, FCRA, DPPA, other licensing agreements, something that restricts how you may use the data. Tombolo has supported file-based constraints for a while now, and we've improved them. Constraints can now be applied to individual fields and input files, and they are rolled up to apply to those files as a whole. Furthermore, constraints at the file level and at the field level can be propagated from input to output. At the field level, they're matched by name. The new user interface for editing and viewing constraints is still under development. Here you can see a view of the constraints for fields within an input file, both those applied to that file and those inherited from an upstream file. This is the view of the edit screen, where you can assign constraints to a specific field. Note that more than one constraint can apply to any number of fields. The code for individual jobs can be sourced from a Git repo as well as from an existing work unit. Those repos can now include submodules. So the submodules are automatically initialized recursively and brought in so they can be used as libraries for existing ECL jobs. The submodules allow you to easily include code from other repos. And lastly, Tombolo now supports workflow versioning. You can easily maintain a log of changes to your workflows and switch between them as necessary to test changes. For more information, you can see on the screen, we have repos. The first two URLs are repos to our open source libraries. And then we have some email addresses for contact information. Make note of those. Feel free to reach out. That concludes an overview of the changes to Real BI and Tombolo. I'd like to turn this over to Yadhap, who will show you a bit more of how Tombolo works.
Thank you, Dan. Tombolo has changed a lot since the last summit, and we have added some new features and we have enhanced some of the existing features. And today I'm going to demonstrate some of those new features and some of those enhanced features. I'll be focusing more on these new features only. All right, so I was trying to log into Tombolo and it actually routed me to this screen. Okay, so it's because we are using Azure AD for authorization and authentication now. If you want to spin Tombolo like the older way with auth service, we can still do that with a simple configuration change, but this is the desired way. So I'm going to click over here and it is redirecting me back to Tombolo. Now I am logged in. So let us explore this UI over here. Okay, so we have this left navigation bar over here. Depending upon our user privilege, you will see, for example, if you have admin privilege, you will be able to see these admin utilities. If you are not an admin, if you just have read-only access, you might not see all this. Okay, so we have the settings, we have this admin utilities, and we have asset definition and job execution. On the top navigation bar, nothing has changed. You see the user's name over here. We have this help sections and we have this language switcher, which I'm going to show you at the end of the presentation. All right. So once you are logged in, what is the first thing you need to do on Tombolo? So the first thing you need to do on Tombolo is you will have to create an application. So what is an application? So basically, application is a way to group your assets, okay? So you create an application and all your assets will be there. Unless you share this application with someone, or unless you make this application public, nobody can see your assets or anything that you create inside this application. I have already created a demo application over here. So if you see over here, you see this icon over here. It is saying this is a private application. If it was public, there would have been a different icon. All right. So I'm already on that application. So what is the next thing we can do on Tombolo? So the next thing we can do on Tombolo is we need to configure the clusters so we can interact with HPCC. I have a pre-configured cluster over here. If you want to add a new cluster, all you have to do is click over here, select a cluster that you want to add. If it is protected by username and password, you enter that username and password and then add it. And that's it. Now, since I already have the clusters, I'm going to switch to this assets page, right? So right now, there are no assets over here. The asset table is empty. We can come to this view to add assets, but why do we want to add assets into Tombolo? So one of the main reason why we want to import assets to Tombolo is we can create workflows, or we can add documentation on those assets. All right, so if you click on this button over here, it will show different kind of assets we can add. We can add file, we can add logical files, we can add indexes, we can add queries and jobs. And this file template and real BI dashboard are something that you can create on Tombolo. These are not something that you can import. I will show you how to create file template and what these file templates are later in this presentation. All right. So since we are going to be working with jobs a lot of times, I'm going to add some jobs. So clicking over here. Okay, and first I need to select a job type. There are few job types that you can select, but I'm just going to select a regular job, and I'm going to mention the cluster that I'm going to import these jobs from. And over here, there is this source. So the source is like, we can import jobs either from HPCC, or we can import this job from GitHub. For this demonstration, I'm just going to import jobs from HPCC. All right, so I'm going to search for some jobs. Okay, I just typed COVID, and as I was typing, Tombolo backend was querying HPCC cluster, and it came with this. It came with some of these results. So I'm going to add some of these jobs over here. Okay. Now, as I clicked on these jobs, it added these tabs down here. So this is the new feature we added. It is a bulk import. We can import jobs in bulk. You can add like 10, 15 jobs, whatever number you want. And then you can click on save jobs, and it will add all the jobs. Now let me search for one more job. Okay. So we have this job over here. This is called test output. I'm going to add that job. Now, let us explore what kind of metadata we are collecting from these jobs. Okay, so I'm clicking on the first job, and as you can see over here, we are grabbing the name, the title, the entry BWR, and if you switch to ECL tab, we can see the ECL for this job. As Dan mentioned earlier, we have a new view over here. We have this syntax highlighting. We have this mini map where you can click, and then it will take you to a particular section of the code. Okay, and we have this input files. If this job had some input files, it would you would see over here. If it had output files, you would see over here. So now I'm not going to make any change for this particular job. I'm just going to save it. Okay, so that job is saved. It indicates over here, and I'm going to close this. All right, so on this other job, I want to make some changes over here on the description section. So this is a markdown. This is a markdown editor. It takes a markdown text. So for example, if you type, okay, so I'm just typing this for a test. Okay, so this is a markdown text. It will be converted to markdown text. All right, so another feature we have added is notification on job level. So for example, if you want to be notified when this job fails, or if this job executes successfully, you can configure all that over here, and you can add as many number of recipients as you want. Okay, so for now, I'm not going to configure this notification. All right, I'm going to save now. So this job is also saved. All right. So let's go back to assets now and see how many jobs we have. We have 2 jobs. I failed to add that test job, so I'm going to go back again over here, and I'm going to search for that test job one more time, asking me to select a cluster. Okay, now we have all our assets here. Okay, so these are the only jobs I wanted to add. And if you look over here, we have this grouping section. This is the way to organize your assets. For example, you can create a new group. Okay. And then we can move our assets into that group. Okay. Right. And when we go inside that group, that asset is in there now. So what else can we do over here? So we have this print feature. Okay. And if you want to print the metadata about your asset, you can just click on this print icon over here. And then you can select what you want to print about that particular job. And then if you hit download PDF, it will download a PDF with all those metadata. All right, so that is all I wanted to show over here. So let's see what we can do here. Okay, so the next thing is, so with all this asset inside our application, one of the key features that Tombolo provides is an ability to configure a workflow within your data lake environment and orchestrate that particular workflow. So we can do that from this definition module over here. To create a workflow, click on this add button. I'm just going to give a name for this data flow. And you can configure notification on data flow level also. If you want to be notified when the data flow completes, or if it fails for any reason, you can configure all that. I'm not going to configure for this demo. I'm just going to save this. Oh, I need to select a cluster. Okay, now the data flow is created. I'm going inside. Now, so this is a workflow designer. So this was a complete rework. If you had seen Tombolo before, it's completely different now. So this is a data flow designer. If you see over here, it says you are in a working copy. So basically what it means is this is just a working copy. You are just designing workflow. You are not executing a workflow. So let us go ahead and see how we can design a workflow. To design a workflow, I'm going to add this job node. Okay, so right now this job node is empty. I'm going to double click and I'm going to associate that with a job. Okay, I'm going to add the other one, do the same thing. And finally, I'm going to add the last one. And there you go. It's trying, it looks like it had some input files and it took some time to fetch all those files. All right, so now we have all these jobs in our designer. So what I really want to do is I want to execute this job automatically. So once the first job is done executing, I want to trigger, it to trigger the other job and subsequent jobs. Okay, so let me start from the right hand side. If I double click that one, node, I have the schedule option. I'm clicking on edit schedule. And for this one, there are many options, many kind of scheduling options, but I'm going to pick job based for now. And I'm going to say, run this job after this COVID-19 query job is done running. Okay, and then it it added this dotted connection, right? And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Job based test output. Okay, so actually I was supposed to do with I was supposed to connect with HPCC Systems. I connected with the wrong job, so I'm going back over here to make this correction. Okay, good. All right, now I want to automatically execute these jobs. Right now, we have all this connection, right? One job will trigger the other one, but we have not configured any kind of a trigger for this first job. Okay, so I'm going over here. I'm clicking on schedule, and for this one, I'm going to make it a timer-based job. So basically, I will tell Tombolo execute this job after certain intervals. Okay, so I'm saying Tombolo execute this job every 6 hours. There you go. And as you can see over here, it added this small icon, this timer icon, indicating that this is a timer job, and it is configured. It has a cron expression configured. All right. So let us look at the UI over here. Okay, so if you look at here, there are some green arrows, there are some red arrows, there are some dotted arrows, all these icons, and we do not really know what they are. So we have this info section over here. If you click, it will tell you exactly what those items are. Okay. And then if you want to hide any of this node for any reason, if you think that it is cluttered or, for any reason, you can do so. And if you want to get back those nodes, all you have to do is, go back over here and say, show those nodes. Right. So one other thing I want to show is we have a new feature. We added a new feature, that is synchronization. So these jobs could change, right? The input files and output files could change. So we want to get the latest input and output files. So for that one, if we synchronize the graph, then it will fetch the latest one. So we can test that right now. Let me go ahead and get rid of this file, right? And if I do synchronize graph, it will check with HPCC. And if it finds there should be an input file, it will fetch it again. Okay, so that is the synchronization part. And so right now this job is configured to run, it is configured to run every 6 hours, right? But if you want to execute this job when a certain kind of file arrives at landing zone, so we have added that option. It is called file monitoring. So what I can do is I can monitor a directory in HPCC, and if a desired file appears on that landing zone, then we can trigger these jobs. Okay. So for this one, we will have to create a template. So I'm going back to assets. I'm going over here to file template, and I will say COVID files. Just an example. Okay, and I will say look for the file that contains this keyword COVID. Okay, I'm using wildcard, but we have other options. All right, and I'm going back to definitions, and I will say I want to associate this blank template. Let us see if that was saved or not. I need to filter file template, COVID files, logical file. Okay, so I made a mistake over here. So I need to mention what directory I want to monitor. Okay, so I'm monitoring landing zone files. So I'm going over here and I'm going to say, I will monitor the root directory. Okay, anything in the root directory, if I get a file with that COVID keyword, then it should match this template. So I'm going to save it again, going back to definitions. Now, if I double click, we have this template over here. Okay, now I will change the scheduling for this job. I would say instead of timer based, I will change this to template based. Okay, so whenever the file that matches this template arrives on the landing zone, then trigger this workflow. Now we are done designing the workflow. We are done designing the workflow. Now we want to execute this workflow, right? So we have this option over here. It is called save version. Click on this button. Just give a name to this version. I'm naming this V1 and create it. Okay. And so when you do that, you are creating a new version. Every time you save a new version, you will be able to see this under the drop down. Right now we are not executing any workflows. There are no any live workflows. In Tombolo we have this term live. When we say live, it means this workflow has not started, it is not executed. So I'm going to make this workflow live. Okay, it will take some time. Okay, let us go back to the drop down, and you can see the V1 is live right now. So the file monitoring has started. So if it finds a file, then it will execute. If the first job was timer based, then the timer would start now. Okay, now there is this live workflow and you want to make some change on this workflow. How do you do that? In our previous version, before we made this change, if you make any changes on a workflow, you will be messing with the live workflow. We have changed that one with this versioning. If you want to work on this existing workflow without affecting, you go over here and you get a local copy. You branch out from this copy, okay, and make this a local copy. Now it is on your designer. Now you can mess around without affecting your live workflow. All right, so this is all I wanted to show over here. Now let us switch to job execution. Okay, so once this workflow is live, once it is executing all these jobs, we want to kind of monitor, right? We want to go back and see what happened to this workflow. So we can do that with from this module over here. I'm going back over here, click in. Okay, now you cannot see any records because we just created this workflow. We just created this workflow and there were no execution. So I just wanted to show you, we have another instance running where the jobs are being executed. So let me switch to that instance right here. Okay. So if you look at over here, you will see, I tried to execute this workflow so many times. It was failing for some reason. And if the notification was configured, the user certainly got those notifications. Okay. And it says the first batch of jobs, 4 jobs ran, right? So let's click on this one and it will tell you exactly what those 4 jobs were, okay? And then let's go back over here. It says, all 9 of these jobs were successful. So let's expand this one and it will give us the duration, like how long it took for each jobs and what is the status. If it is successful, it puts this green badge, okay? And it is saying all those 9 jobs were executed. And if you look at the graph, all these 9 jobs are highlighted. So this is all about job workflow designing and workflow execution and how we can go back and look at all this execution, right? So the next thing, so these are the main, these were the main features that I wanted to demonstrate to you all today. Let's go back to assets tab over here. Okay. So Tombolo is packed with a lot of features, and like I said, those were the main ones that I wanted to demonstrate. If you want, if you are using Tombolo and if you need any help, or if you just want to look at the documentation, like what assets are, what definitions and workflow and things like that, you can come over here. We have this help section and we have this user guide. You can just click on the user guide and go through this user guide yourself. Okay. And lastly, not only we are adding features, we want Tombolo to be accessible as much as possible. So we have added this new added a new internet. We wanted to internationalize, so we can spin Tombolo in any language. So just for this demonstration, I have configured this instance to run, to be in English and Chinese. So let us switch to Chinese and see what happens. Okay. So I selected a language from this dropdown, and everything is converted to Chinese now. Everything is translated to Chinese. Even if you look inside the job, all these labels are translated to Chinese. So this was our effort to make Tombolo more accessible to everyone. And before I wrap up, I wanted to let you know that if you guys want to try Tombolo, you can always clone our repo. It is available, and we also have installation guide. You can run Tombolo on Docker or without Docker. The instructions are easy to follow, and you can always give it a try. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.